siege that often has no sound, no alarm, and no outward sign that the battle is being lost. It turns out the most devastating damage is the kind we never see coming.
I mean, really think about that for a second. That while you feel fine, maybe even totally healthy, a whole cascade of destruction could be underway, targeting your most vital systems. And this isn't science fiction, it's a very real physiological reality for a lot of people. Okay, so let's dive into this with a core concept, the silent organ. The liver is the classic example here. It's so resilient, so tough, that it can take a huge amount of damage, progressing toward failure, without sending out any clear distress signals. By the time symptoms actually appear, the damage is often already incredibly advanced. And the liver isn't the only organ that keeps secrets. Get this. Out of an estimated 805,000 heart attacks in the US every year, a staggering 170,000 of them are silent. That's more than 1 in every 5. A major event that causes permanent damage to the heart muscle, and the person doesn't even know it happened. So the big takeaway here is that this whole phenomenon of silent damage isn't some isolated thing. From our hearts to our kidneys, this insidious process can happen with symptoms that are so minimal or so vague that they're just easily dismissed or mistaken for something else entirely. So the big question is, how? How does this even happen? To really get it, we need to go to the microscopic crime scene. We've got to investigate the biological mechanics of this invisible war.
Well, the primary culprit, the main instigator in this internal drama, is often something called chronic systemic inflammation. Now, this isn't the helpful, acute inflammation you get with a cut on your finger. No, this is a low-grade, persistent state of emergency where your body's defense systems are basically on all the time, causing this constant, slow-burn, collateral damage to your own tissues and organs.
Let's use the liver as our case study again to see exactly how this damage builds up. In stage 1, you just have some fat buildup, but no real harm done. But by stage 2, that fat has triggered the inflammatory response. This is the key turning point. If you leave it unchecked, that inflammation leads to stage 3, fibrosis, which is basically scarring. Finally, you hit stage 4, cirrhosis, where severe, irreversible scarring totally compromises how the organ works. It's this slow, step-by-step march, and it's all driven by that inflammation.
And here's the absolutely critical insight. This process, it isn't unique to the liver. This destructive cycle, some initial injury, a persistent inflammatory response, and then this faulty repair process that leads to scarring or fibrosis. That's what researchers call the end common pathway for a whole host of chronic diseases, affecting all sorts of organs all over the body.
Now, this slide here, it gives us a perfect visual map of this invisible war, but this time it's in the kidneys. It starts with some kind of initial injury, maybe from high blood pressure or something. That kicks off the inflammation. This leads to scarring and fibrosis, which ultimately causes a progressive loss of function and could end in end-stage renal disease. You see, it's the exact same devastating pattern, just in a different location.
Okay, so we know the damage is happening silently, but is the body completely quiet? Well, not always. The problem is it doesn't shout, it whispers, and we need to figure out how to hear those whispers before the alarm finally starts blaring.
Check this out. This study looked at patients with a heart valve condition who were totally asymptomatic. They reported no symptoms. They felt completely fine. And yet, over just 12 months, advanced imaging showed unequivocal progression of damage. Their hearts were literally physically changing for the worse, all while they felt nothing. And this visualizes it perfectly. On the left, each one of those lines is a patient. You can see a clear upward trend in myocardial fibrosis, that's scarring of the heart muscle, over just 1 year. Then on the right, you can see patients literally shifting into more severe grades of damage. This is a time lapse of silent destruction.
So what are these whispers? Well, they're things we brush off every single day. That recurring indigestion, that feeling of a pulled muscle in your back or chest, a deep, unshakable fatigue you blame on a long week at work, brain fog you just chalk up to stress. These aren't just minor annoyances. Sometimes they can be the only clues that a much more serious process is underway.
You know, this quote from Dr. Leslie Cho at the Cleveland Clinic just captures the danger perfectly. It's the story we tell ourselves, right? I'm just tired. I just overdid it. It's just heartburn. This tendency to explain away the body's subtle signals is such a common and dangerous pattern that allows this silent damage to just keep going, completely unchecked.
So, if we can't always trust our own senses to sound the alarm, we need better tools. And that brings us to our final section, the technological hunt for early evidence. the modern methods being used to unmask these silent saboteurs before it's way too late.
Let's look at detecting kidney damage as an example. The old-school way relied on markers like serum creatinine. The problem? By the time your creatinine levels are off, you've already lost a ton of kidney function, often irreversibly. It's a late alarm. The new approach uses these novel biomarkers that actually look for the active damage itself, the inflammation, the early scarring. It's the difference between hearing a smoke detector and finding the ashes of your house.
So the really important point here is that these new tools, they're like forensic detectives. They're not waiting for the organ to fail to tell you something's wrong. They're looking for the fingerprints of the disease process itself, the specific molecules that say, hey, inflammation or early fibrosis is happening right now, which gives doctors a chance to step in much, much earlier.
And this shift is happening all across medicine. Things like a coronary artery calcium score can find plaque in your heart's arteries long before you have any symptoms. A carotid ultrasound can do the same thing for the arteries in your neck. Advanced MRIs can actually measure that heart muscle scarring we saw earlier. The goal is always the same: make the invisible visible.
This statement from research on chronic kidney disease, it just captures the central tragedy of silent damage. The consequences are so stark. By the time most people get a diagnosis, it's often too late for the most effective treatments because permanent damage is already a reality. This really highlights the immense stakes. The quietest signals from our body might just be the most important ones we ever hear. The real question is, are we finally learning how to listen?